Good evening and welcome to CYC News for today, Sunday the 14th of July 2013 and the 7th of Apip 1729 AM. I'm Mina Nada.
And I'm Melissa Dowd. In today's headlines, Copts are killed in southern Egypt and North Sinai. The Coptic Orthodox Church signals objection to constitutional declaration. The State Department calls for Morsi's release. Investigations are being carried out in France following a deadly train crash south of Paris. And a Canadian train disaster has left 30 people missing and feared dead.
We begin our news with the Copt situation in Egypt after Morsi's ouster. Dabaya village in Luxor, southern Egypt, witnessed attacks on its Coptic Christians, which resulted in the murder of 4 Copts and the injury of 3 others, as well as the burning and looting of 23 houses of Christian families. Most of the village Copts fled the city, while those who remained are staying in the local church for fear of repeated attacks. The village lost 4 of its men, while 3 others are in a critical state in hospital, while the local Egyptian media has no reportings of these attacks against Copts. Prayers were held today at the funeral of the victims of Dabaya village by Bishop Beeman, who confirmed his refusal of the so-called reconciliation sessions before the law is applied. The bishop pointed out that Pope Tawadros II is monitoring the situation and also encouraged Copts to withstand further persecution they may suffer in the coming stages.
In North Sinai, churches have been closed under instructions from His Grace Bishop Cosman due to the lack of security protecting Copts, Christian clergymen and churches, especially since the dismissal of President Morsi. North Sinai Governorate witnessed the assassination of Father Mina Cherubim by the hand of armed militants in a series of violent attacks made by the Muslim Brotherhood since the dismissal of President Morsi. In addition, Sheikh Zayed residents found the beheaded body of Magdi Lamai, aged 70, at the cemeteries in North Sinai. With evidence on the body, he had been beaten and dragged. Magdi was kidnapped last Saturday, and the kidnappers contacted his family asking for a ransom of £500,000 Egyptian pounds, but never called again. Most Coptic families in Rafah have fled in light of numerous threats being made by terrorist groups there.
In Port Said Governorate, masked gunmen opened fire at St. Mina Church last Tuesday and managed to get away, according to state-run news agency MENA. No casualties were reported. Army and police squads arrived at the scene of the attack, and efforts are being undertaken to identify the perpetrators. From another side, the Revolutionary Socialist movement condemned the attacks on Copts and their churches, which have intensified after the removal of President Mohamed Morsi. The movement called for bringing in the instigators of these attacks to justice. It also noted that the movements and parties of political Islam are trying to turn the political struggle into a religious conflict to create sectarian war in the country.
The Coptic Orthodox Church in Egypt submitted to the presidency on Friday a memorandum of legal objections to the recent constitutional declaration announced by the president of the transitional phase, Mr. Adli Mansour. The church understands the nature of the constitutional declaration in the transitional phase and proposes the preparation of the new constitution for the country as opposed to the suspended constitution. It also demands that there should be amendments made to the suspended constitution, that the participation of the church to the 50-member communal committee not be limited, and that some of its representatives be named to the legal committee that will formulate the amendments. A meeting will be held today between the church and the advisors of the interim president to discuss these objections.
State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki called Friday for the release of ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi from detention, marking the first time the United States has made such a call. Psaki said the detentions of Morsi and members of the Muslim Brotherhood were politically motivated and urged the military to let them go. Hundreds of Morsi supporters rallied Friday in front of a Cairo mosque, calling not only for his release, but for his restoration to the job of presidency. 51 people died there last Monday when pro-Morsi protesters attacked security forces who opened fire after the death of policemen. Morsi was ousted on the 3rd of July after massive demonstrations against his regime all over the country. An estimated 33 million people rallied in streets after the declaration of the rebel campaign for the numbers of Egyptians' signatures against Morsi that exceeded the 22 million votes. Subsequently, Egypt's Public Prosecutor's Office says it is investigating complaints against ousted President Mohamed Morsi and members of the Muslim Brotherhood. They include spying, inciting, killing protesters, attacking military barracks, and damaging the economy.
Going to France now, where officials have declared 6 people were killed and more than 20 injured in a train crash at Bretigny-sur-Orge, south of the French capital, Paris. The intercity train had just left Paris and was heading towards Limoges when it derailed, crashing into a station platform, and passengers were left trapped inside carriages. French President François Hollande visited the scene and expressed his shock at the accident. Mr. Hollande told reporters 6 people died and 20 others were seriously injured. All those with serious injuries are now in hospital. He spoke of his solidarity with the families of those caught up in the accident, saying that the station would be closed for 3 days while investigators were carried out to determine what led to the derailment.
We turn to Canada, where Canadian police have said 30 people are still missing since Saturday's train disaster in a Quebec town, and are most probably dead. 20 bodies have already been found after a runaway train carrying oil derailed and exploded in Lac Mégantic. The train operator's boss blamed a Canadian driver for the accident, saying he had probably failed to set a series of handbrakes. At least 30 buildings were destroyed by the fireball from the explosion. This forced some 2,000 town residents to flee their homes.
In China, some 300,000 people in eastern China have fled their homes as Typhoon Soulik moves inland amid warnings of floods and landslides, the state media reports. Winds of 119 kilometers per hour lashed the coastal Fujian province, said China's National Meteorological Center. Emergency response plans were being implemented, said Xinhua state media, after recent torrential rain reportedly left 200 people dead or missing. The typhoon earlier led to extensive flooding on the island of Taiwan. So far, 1 person is reported to have been killed on the island, while more than 8,500 people were evacuated from mountainous and other areas prone to landslides.
US Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano has said she will step down to become the next president of the University of California system. She has presided over changes to immigration enforcement and a new focus on disaster response during her tenure. In a statement, President Barack Obama praised Ms. Napolitano, saying, "The American people are safer and more secure thanks to Janet's leadership." Her resignation comes as Congress is debating broad immigration reform. Analysts say that the former Arizona governor had been an outspoken advocate for changing the US immigration laws, and replacing her could complicate an already tough path in the Republican-controlled House. Ms. Napolitano is only the 3rd person to hold the top job at the Department of Homeland Security, created in response to the 9/11 attacks. It includes 22 departments. The department's mandate is extremely broad, from immigration and deportations to airport screenings and disaster management. She will leave the department in early September.
A woman described as a Saudi princess has been arrested in California and accused of human trafficking. Michelle Alaban, 42, is accused of forcing a Kenyan woman to work 16 hours a day while paying her far less than what she was originally promised. Authorities say Ms. Alaban took the woman's passport, precluding her escape. Her lawyer called the case a dispute over work hours. In November, Californian voters toughened human trafficking penalties. If convicted, Ms. Alaban faces a maximum sentence of 12 years in prison, double the punishment prescribed before voters approved the law known as Proposition 35. Prosecutors say she was one of 6 wives of a Prince Abdulrahman bin Nasser bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, a sanction of Saudi royal family.
A Pakistani teenager nearly killed by Taliban gunmen for advocating that all girls should have the right to go to school gave her first formal public remarks Friday at the United Nations. It also happened to be Malala Yousafzai's 16th birthday. She looked out at an audience of hundreds of children from around the world and UN members, including General Secretary Ban Ki-moon and told them that she was wearing a pink shawl that once belonged to Benazir Bhutto, the two-time Prime Minister of Pakistan, who was killed in 2007 in a suicide attack at a political rally.
Being here with such honorable people is a great moment in my life. And it's an honor for me that today I'm wearing a shawl of Benazir Bhutto Shaheed. I don't know where to begin my speech. I don't know what people would be expecting me to say. But first of all, thank you to God, for whom we all are equal. And thank you to every person who has prayed for my fast recovery and a new life.
And on to some health issues now. Danish research suggests that today's 90-year-olds are surviving into very old age with better mental performance than ever before. People born in 1915 scored higher in cognitive tests in their 90s compared with those born a decade earlier, according to the study in Lancet. Experts say that better living standards and intellectual stimulation may be key factors. The number of people reaching very old age is on the rise globally. In the US, the amount of people aged 90 or above has more than doubled in 30 years. In Denmark, where the study took place, the chance of surviving into the 10th decade of life has gone up by about 30% each decade for people born in 1895, 1905 and 1915. However, there has been little research on the quality of life that people reaching such an old age can look forward to.
A large international study reveals that air pollution is harming people with weak hearts, even killing them. Experts estimate the toll includes thousands of Britons each year. The British Heart Foundation, which funded the Lancet work, says the UK must clean up its air. Many of its cities often exceed safe levels set by the European Union. The government has already admitted that in 15 regions, air quality will breach European Union limits until the year 2020. But DEFRA says it is committed to improving air quality and that most parts of the UK meet European Union air quality limits for all pollutants. Air pollution, largely from traffic fumes, has previously been linked to heart attacks, but not heart failure. This happens when the heart muscle becomes weak and lacking performance in pumping blood around the body. It is often the consequence of a heart attack and affects more than 750,000 people in the UK.
That's all from CYC News for today. Stay tuned with more Christian content on CYC. From the studios in Sydney, Australia, I'm Melissa Dowd.
And I'm Mina Nada. Good night and God bless.